The most powerful man in golf is under siege. Not by a rival league, not by a bad contract, but by a threat from within the very walls of the game's most iconic figure. In a stunning twist that has sent shockwaves through the locker rooms and boardrooms of the PGA Tour, a legal war is brewing that threatens to tear the sport apart. At the center of it all is the game's new commissioner, Brian Rolapp, a man who came from the NFL to save the tour from financial ruin. But now his carefully crafted image is in jeopardy. The lawyer for Tiger Woods, the most famous athlete on the planet, is threatening to expose secret bank accounts. The accusations are explosive, hinting at a conspiracy involving billions of dollars, secret deals with the Saudis, and a power struggle that makes the battle with LIV Golf look like a casual round on a Sunday. This isn't just a dispute over money. It is a fight for the very soul of professional golf. And when the dust settles, the man left standing may not be the one you expect. This is the story of the hidden war at the heart of the PGA Tour. The world of professional golf has always been a tapestry of tradition, punctuated by moments of high drama on pristine fairways. But the drama unfolding in the summer of 2026 is not happening on the 18th green. It is happening in courtrooms, boardrooms, and through the aggressive legal posturing of the sport's most powerful figures. The saga centers on Brian Rolapp, a man who was brought in from the National Football League to steer the PGA Tour through its most turbulent era, and Tiger Woods, the sport's greatest legend, who finds himself in the most dangerous battle of his life, a battle that now threatens to expose a system of secret financial dealings at the highest levels of the game. The PGA Tour has named Brian Rolapp as its next commissioner, effective January 1, 2027, solidifying his control over the organization. Rolapp, who previously served as the NFL's chief media and business officer, was hired as the tour's CEO in June 2025 and has spent the past year reshaping its competitive structure. The announcement of his promotion was paired with the unveiling of a dramatic new two-tiered competitive model set to begin in 2028, a vision that includes a top-tier championship series and a secondary challenger series. It was supposed to be a victory lap for the new boss. Instead, the victory has been overshadowed by the thunderous noise coming from the legal battles of his most famous player. While Rolapp was finalizing his plans for the tour's future, Tiger Woods was fighting a very different kind of war. In March 2026, Woods was arrested on a misdemeanor DUI charge after a car accident near his home in Florida. The arrest, which blew .000 on a breathalyzer, involved a refusal to submit to a urinalysis, triggering an automatic suspension of his driver's license. Police reportedly found 2 hydrocodone pills in Woods' pocket. The legal fallout has been immediate and brutal. Woods pleaded not guilty, and his attorney, Douglas Duncan, has been fiercely fighting prosecutors' attempts to subpoena his client's prescription drug records, citing a constitutional right to privacy. The prosecutors are seeking records from the beginning of 2026 to determine the number of pills, dosages, and warnings associated with Woods' medications. This is where the story turns from a legal problem for a troubled athlete into a potential catastrophe for the entire PGA Tour. The whispers in the golf community are that Woods' attorney is not just fighting to protect his client's medical history, but is preparing to launch a devastating counterattack against the tour's new leadership. According to sources, the defense is preparing to allege that the tour's new commissioner, Brian Rolapp, has been involved in financial dealings so secret and so compromising that their exposure would destroy his career and the credibility of the organization he is about to lead. The rumor, growing louder by the day, suggests Woods' legal team possesses evidence linking Rolapp to secret bank accounts and financial arrangements that contradict the public narrative of a transparent, athlete-centric tour. The irony of the situation is not lost on anyone. Here is Brian Rolapp, a man who was brought in to clean up the financial mess created by the LIV Golf defections and the failed Saudi merger, now potentially facing exposure by the very player he was supposed to help protect. The foundation of the tour's new era is built on the promise of transparency and financial stability, yet the first major test of its leadership is a threat to expose a secret financial underworld involving its biggest star. As Woods prepares to go to trial, the golf world holds its breath, wondering if the threat to expose Rolapp's bank accounts is a desperate legal ploy, or the first shot in a war that could bring the entire tour down to understand the powder keg that is now threatening to explode. You have to go back to the moment the PGA Tour realized it was no longer the only game in town. The emergence of LIV Golf, backed by the vast wealth of the Saudi Public Investment Fund, forced the tour into a war it never wanted to fight. It was a war for players, for prestige, and for the very financial future of professional golf. When Jay Monahan, the outgoing commissioner, stepped aside at the end of 2026, he left behind a battlefield that needed a new kind of general. The tour didn't just need a golf expert. It needed a media mogul, a financial architect, and a negotiator who could handle billionaires. They found that in Brian Rolapp. Rolapp came from the NFL, a league that has perfected the art of turning a sport into an unstoppable financial juggernaut. As the NFL's chief media and business officer, he was the man behind the league's multi-billion-dollar media rights deals and its partnerships with giants like Apple and Nike. He was even considered a potential successor to NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell. He was a Harvard Business School graduate, a family man from the Maryland suburbs, a man who skipped college classes to play golf and then landed a job at Congressional Country Club for gas money. He was, in many ways, the ultimate outsider. And when he was hired as the PGA Tour's first ever CEO in June 2025, the message was clear. The tour was entering a new era of hard-nosed business. The days of gentlemanly handshakes and backroom agreements were over. The first major test of Rolapp's reign came quickly. He immediately set about restructuring the entire competitive model, a task that put him in direct conflict with the tour's most powerful factions. The model he unveiled, set to debut in 2028, is a complete overhaul of professional golf. It abolishes the traditional system and introduces a two-tiered structure, the PGA Tour Championship Series and the PGA Tour Challenger Series. It was a risky move, one that would create a clear hierarchy of haves and have-nots for the first time in PGA Tour history. The top tier, with its $20 million purses and guaranteed access, would become the exclusive domain of the game's elite. The bottom tier, with its $4 million purses, would be a brutal battlefield where players fight to earn a promotion back to the big leagues. This new system was built on a foundation of meritocracy and clarity, but for many players, it felt like a threat to their livelihoods. Rolapp's vision was ambitious, but his methods created tension. He was an outsider imposing a corporate structure on a sport steeped in tradition. The players, who were used to a system that allowed them to pick and choose their schedule, were now being told they would be subject to promotion and relegation. The new structure meant that failing to perform could send a veteran star to the minor leagues. It was a harsh, unforgiving model that rewarded winning and punished mediocrity. It was into this environment of radical change and simmering resentment that Tiger Woods' legal troubles exploded. Woods was more than just a player. He was the chairman of the Future Competition Committee that had helped design the new system. He was the tour's most influential voice. And now, he was a defendant. The arrest on the DUI charge in March 2026 was a personal tragedy for Woods, but it became a political crisis for the tour. The prosecutors wanted his prescription records. Woods' lawyer, Douglas Duncan, fought aggressively to keep them private, citing a constitutional right to privacy. But the legal strategy was quickly evolving into something more than just a defense. Duncan wasn't just trying to protect Woods' medical history. He was preparing to go on the offensive, and his target was not the prosecution. His target was the man who was changing the face of the tour, Brian Rolapp. The whispers that Woods' team was about to expose Rolapp's secret bank accounts began to circulate in the corridors of power, turning a simple DUI case into a potential coup. The new commissioner, who had spent months trying to sell the players on his vision of a merit-based future, was now facing a threat from the sport's most powerful player. The clash was inevitable. And as the legal battle raged, the golf world braced itself for the fallout. The rumors that had been swirling through the locker rooms and private jets of professional golf finally collided with reality in a Florida courtroom. The legal battle between Tiger Woods' defense team and state prosecutors reached a critical turning point, and the outcome revealed just how far Woods' attorney was willing to go to protect his client. It also exposed the limits of that protection and set the stage for the explosive accusations that would follow. On May 12, 2026, Judge Darren Steele presided over a hearing in Martin County Circuit Court that lasted just 4 minutes. In that brief window, the trajectory of Woods' legal battle shifted dramatically. The judge approved an agreement between Woods' attorney, Douglas Duncan, and prosecutors that would force the legendary golfer's prescription drug records to be handed over to the state. The subpoena, which had been issued weeks earlier, sought copies of all prescription medication records for Woods from a Palm Beach pharmacy, covering the period from the start of 2026 through the end of March, the month of his arrest. The speed of the hearing was remarkable. For minutes to decide the fate of records that could contain information about the medications, dosages, and warnings associated with Woods' prescriptions. But the real story was in the compromise. Duncan had fought aggressively to keep the records private, arguing in court filings that Woods possessed a constitutional right to privacy interest in his prescription medications. The attorney had requested a hearing to determine whether prosecutors could make a compelling enough case to justify intrusion into Woods' privacy. He had also asked the judge for a protective order that would ensure the records never became public. The agreement reached in that 4-minute hearing delivered on Duncan's second request. Prosecutors agreed to a protective order limiting the release of Woods' prescription records to a tight circle: prosecutors, law enforcement officers, state experts, and Woods' defense team. The records would be shielded from public view, kept out of the hands of journalists and fans who might try to access them through open records laws. It was a victory for Woods' privacy, but it was also a concession. The records would be handed over. The state would get what it needed. The legal maneuvering revealed the high stakes of the case. Woods had pleaded not guilty to driving under the influence following his March arrest. The sheriff's office report painted a troubling picture. Woods traveling at high speeds on a beachside residential road on Jupiter Island where the speed limit was just 30 miles per hour. His Land Rover had clipped a truck's trailer and rolled onto its side, causing approximately $5,000 in damage to the truck. When deputies arrived, they found 2 pills labeled as hydrocodone in his pocket, and he showed signs of impairment. Woods had agreed to a breathalyzer test that showed no signs of alcohol, but he refused a urine test, which led to the DUI charge and an automatic suspension of his driver's license. But Duncan's fight was about more than just the immediate case. The attorney had previously secured a judge's permission for Woods to leave the country to seek treatment at an inpatient facility. Woods had released a statement following his arrest, acknowledging the seriousness of his situation and announcing he was stepping away to prioritize his health and work toward lasting recovery. The focus on privacy, the aggressive legal pushback, and the willingness to fight the subpoena all suggested that Duncan was building something bigger than a simple DUI defense. And then came the bombshell that the golf world had only whispered about. The records were handed over, but the protective order ensured they remained hidden from public view. Yet sources close to the situation began to suggest that Woods' legal team had discovered something far more damning than anything in those prescription files. The whispers that had circulated for weeks grew louder. Douglas Duncan was preparing to launch a devastating counterattack, and his target was not the prosecution. His target was the man who had just been approved as the 5th commissioner of the PGA Tour, a man who had spent the past year reshaping the sport's competitive landscape, while his most famous player was fighting for his reputation. The compromise in the courtroom had bought Woods' team time. It had protected the most sensitive details of his medical history from public scrutiny. But it had also revealed a legal strategy that was about to pivot from defense to offense. As the records were handed over behind closed doors, the golf world braced for what came next. The threat that Woods' attorney would expose Brian Rolapp's secret bank accounts was no longer just a rumor. It was becoming the most dangerous story in professional golf. And the man at the center of it all, the new commissioner who had promised transparency and meritocracy, was about to face his first real test. The weeks following the court hearing became a masterclass in political theater. While the legal machinery churned in the background, Tiger Woods and Brian Rolapp stood side by side, smiling for the cameras. It was a carefully choreographed display of unity that could not hide the tension simmering just beneath the surface. In June, Woods made his first public appearance since his arrest, returning to the podium at the Travelers Championship in Cromwell, Connecticut. He looked healthy, having recently completed a rehabilitation program in Switzerland, and delivered brief, prepared remarks. The appearance was tightly controlled, limited to a few minutes of scripted comments about the future competition committee's work on the new competitive model. Woods spoke of bringing different perspectives together, having honest, hard conversations, and thinking boldly about the future of the game. Then he introduced Brian Rolapp as the tour's new commissioner and handed over the stage. The moment was striking for what it did not include. Woods never mentioned his DUI arrest. He was not made available to reporters. The focus stayed entirely on the tour's future, a future that Woods was helping to shape even as his legal team prepared to take the fight to the man standing beside him. The smile Woods wore for the cameras seemed to contradict the war his attorney was quietly waging behind closed doors. Rolapp used the press conference to unveil the tour's radical new two-tier structure, set to debut in 2028. The championship series would feature 23 to 24 events with $20 million purses, while the Challenger Series would offer at least 20 events with $4 million purses. Sponsor exemptions would disappear. The Tour Championship would move to match play. It was a comprehensive overhaul designed to create clarity, meritocracy, and a product that fans actually wanted to watch. Rolapp, the former NFL executive, was applying a media mogul's logic to professional golf. As he put it, "You've got to get the product right. I don't care how good you think your business model is. If the product isn't right, none of it matters." But even as Rolapp laid out his vision, questions lingered about Woods' place in it. The new system would eliminate sponsor exemptions, and Woods, given his current ranking, would not qualify for the Elite Championship Series events. The tour had previously granted Woods a lifetime achievement exemption after he surpassed 80 PGA Tour wins, guaranteeing him entry into all exclusive events. Now, Rolapp faced a delicate question. When asked whether that exemption would still apply, he sidestepped, saying that when the dust settled, there would be clear eligibility rules. The implication was clear: a special category might need to be created for the sport's biggest star. The irony was thick. Rolapp was building a merit-based system, and the man he was trying to placate was the same man whose attorney was allegedly preparing to expose his secret financial dealings. Meanwhile, the private equity accusations that had dogged Rolapp since his arrival continued to grow louder. The tour had created PGA Tour Enterprises, a for-profit arm, and brought in Strategic Sports Group, with a $1.5 billion investment that could eventually reach $3 billion. More than 213 players now held a combined $1.3 billion in equity grants, with the largest shares tied to career achievement and recent form. Rory McIlroy and Scottie Scheffler sat near the top of the list. But critics, including defectors like Lee Westwood and even current players like Viktor Hovland, accused the tour of treating players as labor, not partners. Westwood, in August, openly mocked Rolapp's claims, using social media to land sharp jabs at the CEO's talk of unity and reform. That gets muddled with, "We only care about economic return," or "it's private equity," Rolapp pushed back. None of that is true. For Rolapp, the debate over private equity was a distraction. For Woods' legal team, it was ammunition. The whispers that had started in the courthouse were now echoing through the locker rooms. The threat to expose secret bank accounts, whether real or manufactured, had become a weapon. And as the summer of 2026 wore on, the golf world waited for the next move in a game that was being played far from the fairways.